Hey, what's up, guys? Happy, what is today? Wednesday. And time just flies when you're cashing tickets. Yesterday was wonderful. I got the Wagertalk Instagram open. So you guys are going to drop your questions in for myself or Adam Trigger. Adam Trigger also swept the board, not just Brian Power and I. So we're going to bring him in here in a second. But I'd like to address something. Remember, drop your comments either on the YouTube channel or on the Instagram. If you got a question about handicapping college basketball, we can get to those as well. The Superbook, John Murray and I got into this last weekend on Kelly and Murray. The Superbook decides to tweet today. I said, fine, let's settle this once and for all. Let's bring in Adam Trigger. Because Adam, I think you and I are on the same page here. Trig15 there on Instagram if you guys aren't following. And of course, at Top Flight SI on X. Trig, I said this and I was like, okay, this is what it is. Drop it in the comments section, the best time zone. We only have 4 time zones in the United States, so only one of those 4. I don't want Andrew McGinnis dropping in like Nova Scotia, whatever time zone that is. Anyway, all jokes aside, you like West Coast time zone if you go to bed early and you wake up early. If you are a night owl, if you are a party girl, if you are a guy that likes to stay up late handicapping, the West Coast time zone sucks. What say you, Adam Trigger?
So, yeah, I mean, if you've known me over the years, like this is a hill that I would always die on, Kel. I would say East Coast by a million. I always hated being out in Vegas with the game starting early. You got to remember, too, for what we do at Wager Talk, the West Coast is tough, man. Like anytime I'm out in Vegas, I'm always up by 4 a.m. And then, of course, you're out in Vegas, like you like to stay up a little bit later. Like if you want to go out or something, it's really tough. So I've always been East Coast time zone, be able to like get my work done in the morning, have the game start later in the day. But I do see I guess I do see like the devil's advocate part. Like, for example, like Mallory likes to go to bed early. So it's like, like last night, for example, like she wants to go to bed at 8:30. Creighton's tipping off at 8:30, right? Like I'm obviously not going to go to bed. So it's like, I get that. Some nights it'd be nice for it to be wrapped up by like 8:30, but it still has to be East Coast time zone. I can't have NFL games starting at 9 a.m.
10 a.m. I know what you mean, though.
10 a.m.
And March Madness is just terrible because we're out at
brutal.
XS. And the next thing you know, the game starts. Like, I was so happy, though, I will say in Vegas, that the Super Bowl did not start till 3 o'clock. I got up at like 11. I finally got to sleep in. I was a little tired, but I was like, you know what? I have time to get ready. Whereas March Madness, I'm up at 5 doing an East Coast show for 8 a.m. Eastern. Anyway, I digress. Thank you guys for jumping in the comment sections. We got a ton of games to hit here. Appreciate you guys jumping in. Adam Trigger, rapid fire. We're going to go right off the top. A game that I played. Miami is currently a 7-point underdog here to the Duke Blue Devils. This is exactly how I see this game going down. Now, a buddy of mine texted me this, Trig. If Miami can knock down their threes, I think they can actually win this game outright. You and I saw this Miami team in person at the Baja Mar tournament against my Kansas State Wildcats. And this team is one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. Now, they've seen some regression, unfortunately, for themselves. But I do think that on a given night, we know that Duke is not necessarily the Duke of old, right? They lost to North Carolina on the road. They lost to Pittsburgh at home, and they lost a couple other games on the road back in November, early December. But here's another one of those quintessential away games where everybody wants to back Duke. Miami, on the other hand, is really ugly. They've dropped 4 straight, 4 of their last 6. Give me your synopsis here on if I'm crazy taking the 7.
No, I certainly don't think you're crazy at 7. That move would entice me to, maybe punch back a little bit with Miami plus the points. I guess there's reasons for not liking either of these sides for me, Kel. One, you and I have talked about Duke on this show before. I think they lack a little bit of toughness. It's part of the reason I don't love them on the road. It's part of the reason I would, I think before the North Carolina game, I thought that they were going to get sort of, out rebounded, out hustled by UNC, and they did. But Miami doesn't have the front court to fully exploit that. Like, they're a little bit undersized. That's kind of the knock on Miami. They're a little undersized. Like, Norchad Omier is a beast, but he's undersized for his position, but he plays really hard. Like, if you want to talk about toughness, I'd rather take O'Meara than a couple of those Duke front court players. Now, the Duke guards are really good, so it's like this was a tough one for me. I think at 7, I lean with you, Miami, and just hope that Miami can hit their shots and stay in the game. But I'm looking for spots to play against Duke, so I wasn't about to lay the points on the road here.
All right, looking for spots to bet against Duke, but not tonight. Here's one right up your alley. Finesse and Pablo wants to know St. Bonaventure, excuse me, while I go all the way down the Wagertalk odds screen to try to find the line. They are a 6-point
That's
favorite.
probably at the top.
Trig.
That one's tipping in a couple minutes, so that one's probably at the top.
Yeah, 6:30 versus LaSalle. 5.5s on a lot of spots here on the Wagertalk odds screen. Did we see some late LaSalle money come in here, Trig?
If you do, I would fade it. Like, I don't think this is a good matchup for LaSalle. So LaSalle's like, I think they're a bad basketball team, Kel. Like, this was the team I thought would finish last by a wide margin in the A10 this year. They've managed to pull off 3 upset wins. One of them was over the weekend against UMass, but UMass really helped them out. That was a game where UMass fired up 27 threes, and UMass is like close to the, I think they're 286th nationally in 3-point shooting. They dug themselves a hole early and tried to shoot their way out of it, and it was a bad call by UMass to cost them that game. But St. Bonaventure matches up much better, in my opinion, for LaSalle to not be able to like catch them off guard. So like LaSalle has 4 really good guards. They'll at times they'll play with 4 guards and basically 1 big, because they lost a lot of their interior size last year. So they're a very small team. Like Brickus and those guards are skilled and they can surprise teams, but you're not going to surprise St. Bonaventure, who will play a very similar style. And that's why I think it would have to be Bonnie's or pass for me here. It's just that the St. Bonaventure guards are better. And then Chad Venning on the inside is going to be really tough for LaSalle to stop. So for me, more of a matchup, thing here. It's tough to lay 6 on the road. It's certainly not my style, but this is one of the scenarios where I think I'd lay the points. I just think the Bonnies are better.
Lay it or don't play it for Trig. We're going to the end of the rotation. UNLV is a 6-point favorite to Air Force. UNLV off a tough home loss to Nevada. If you guys know, that's what we call them, Reno. And then they face Colorado State on deck. Trig, I'm a fan of these situational type plays, right? When you're playing a good team or a rival and then play another team after that. This is just, look, is Air Force the worst team in the Pac-12? Yes, right? 8-16 on the season. They've won 1 game. So going back to that scheduling spot here for the Rebs, hey, guess what? Air Force's only Mountain West win, January 23rd versus UNLV. They won outright in Las Vegas. So that kind of, I would say, just basically wiped out my situational handicap. But the chat wants to know, would you lay 6 in a revenge spot tonight with the Rebs?
I don't think I would. I'm not saying it's the wrong side. I certainly would want more, to back Air Force here. So Air Force, the first meeting between these two teams is a pretty big play for me. That was a 5%er, and it is as easy as it gets. They won the game 90-58. So I do think that UNLV is going to probably go back to the drawing board, maybe make some adjustments. I do think UNLV might be a little bit, they've got to be unhappy with themselves at the way they closed out the game over the weekend. It's a game they probably should have won, and they let slip. Not the easiest trip to Air Force, but you are right, Kel. This is probably the worst team in the Mountain West. I kind of identified the drop-off in this conference to be after Wyoming. So I kind of have San Jose State, Fresno State, and Air Force all like, a little ways, off the rest of the pack. But I don't really want to lay 6 with UNLV because I'm not sure I trust UNLV. Like that's a team I've been willing to go against at times this year. I think they've really overachieved to get to where they are. Let me just pull up the conference standings. I mean, to get to 7-5, I didn't think this team was going to have a winning record in the Mountain West at this point, not with how good those top 6 teams are. So they've overachieved a little bit, but that number's too short to back Air Force. So I still think there's matchup advantages for Air Force, but it's just too short. So it would
All
have,
right, so we've
I
got
can't really get involved.
no worries. If it's a pass, it's a pass, and that's okay because we're going to get to some of the games you do like, some of the games that are on your card. I know you just had a 5% play tip off. Do you want to touch on that? Maybe everybody in the chat can get some live action there. We're going to take some of the questions on YouTube, and then I have some interesting questions about some futures bets I'd like to get to before we end the show.
Yeah, so if you want to try to in-game my 5%er, it's Lehigh money line. The game just started. It's an absolute thriller. We're 5 minutes in. It's 2-2, which is pretty much standard for a lot of these Patriot League games. So you might be able to get that one in play. But yeah, that was the only thing I played tonight, Kel. Was Lehigh. I do have a couple games that haven't started yet that we can go into that I was close with. But yeah, Lehigh is my only play tonight, 5% play. I played it on the money line. So if you want to try to in-play it.
How about this? Is one of those plays that you have an opinion on a game that maybe I also have an opinion on? Colorado State, New Mexico, maybe Florida, Bama?
Yeah, so I have very strong opinions on Colorado State, New Mexico.
Perfect, let's
I would
do
have
it.
loved to. Yeah, so I would have loved to play New Mexico here. And this is, so I was actually at the first game between these two teams in Fort Collins earlier this year. And the thing that makes this such a difficult sort of situation for me to play New Mexico is the line in that first game was Colorado -3.5. They covered, they won by 8. They were up by as much as 20, and New Mexico made a little bit of a run toward the end. But it really was a pretty close game. It was a 3-point game at half. There was some calls that didn't really go New Mexico's way. I know House got a tough fifth foul called on him that took him out of that game. So it was the flow of that game was certainly a game where I could see New Mexico having come out a winner, right? Like if you played 10 times, like it probably breaks better for New Mexico a couple of those times. So I don't mind the revenge sort of home spot here for New Mexico. My problem is where the number is right now, Kelly. Like, I really think at some point, like the books are forcing you to pay such a spot premium in some of these games now that it's really tough to justify laying 7. I probably could have laid 5. I think this might have opened 5, 5.5. If you got on it early, I like that, New Mexico -5. I just don't know if I could tell someone to lay 7.5 because I think that's a really bad number. But as far as the spot is concerned, there's New Mexico probably wins 5 times out of 10. These two teams are pretty evenly matched. Colorado State, they just took advantage of some shot making and a couple of calls that went their way in that first meeting. But there was a stretch where New Mexico looked like the better team. And I would not be at all surprised if they turn around and are the better team tonight. So I like the matchup for New Mexico, but the number got away from me a little bit here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I laid 6.5 last night. A lot of these I like to bet early. I like to bet the overnights because we know ranked teams catching points on the road is one of those systems that I like to fade. It burned me with Houston. Closed 7.5 on Monday. I laid 9. I laid 6.5 last night. It's like Trig said, up to 7.5. Some of these plays hasn't mattered at all. Didn't matter last night with Creighton. Didn't matter with Virginia Tech on Monday. But definitely always buyer beware there with the number. All right, couple guys in the comment section, Trig, want to know. Here's one that I did not even look at. And I know that you have something for Dayton, George Mason. Break it down, Trig. Just an invigorating basketball game that I can't wait to talk about.
No, it is a great game. Listen, the A10, I love this conference. They've been a little bit down the last couple of years from where they were middle of the last decade when they were getting 4 or 5 teams into the tournament, but it's a great conference. Dayton is a fantastic team this year. They're a lot better than I thought. I got a chance to see them in person a couple weeks ago. Deron Holmes is the best player in this league. He's one of the best players in the country. Certainly one of the best I've seen live this year. Just a total animal. That's where I think that I think George Mason's going to have a tough time with him. I like Dayton in this game. Now, going on the road is tough. I know George Mason's going to show up for this game. And that's Dayton starting to get into that scenario where they're starting to get everyone's best shot in this league. They're the ranked team. They've got to go on the road. They're becoming everyone's biggest game. So that can take its toll. I agreed with where this opened, I think around 2. I did think about playing Dayton money line here. Again, it's not easy to win on the road in this league, but Dayton, they're a top 10 3-point shooting team. Deron Holmes is such a tough guy to guard that you really have to be like a VCU, take away the 3-point line, but still be able to handle Holmes to beat Dayton. So I went against them over the weekend just because I thought it was kind of crazy that Fordham was getting 15 points. And Fordham hung around. I think they lost by 7 or 8, so I did win that bet. I would probably come back with Dayton here. I think they'll be a little bit too much. So I lean Dayton on the road at George Mason tonight.
All right, Trig, we got a bunch more questions here on YouTube. Chris wants to know any thoughts on, let's see, number 12, Illinois laying 7.5 at Penn State tonight. Illinois, I've just kind of been really surprised by this team this year, Trig. I don't know about you. Well, let's put it this way. I, at one point in time, really wanted Brad Underwood to be in Manhattan, Kansas. And he's kind of struggled there in Champaign, but this year it seems like he has an overall really well-rounded team. Outside of that overtime loss to Northwestern, this team seems pretty solid.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Now, the one thing you got to know if you're betting this game is it's not at Bryce Jordan. It's at Rec Hall. This is like a special game they've been planning for a little while, I think. So Rec Hall is where they played their games up till 1996 prior to moving to the Bryce Jordan Center. So this is going to be like on campus. I think they use it for like wrestling, maybe volleyball still or something like that. The point is it's definitely going to be sold out. Like the crowd's probably going to be awesome. It's probably going to be like a really cool atmosphere because, it's like a small building on campus. They moved out of this building to a big arena back in the late 90s. So I think that extra juice might put me on Penn State here if I had to play this one, but I'm with you, Kel. I still think Illinois is probably just like superior, but that little wrinkle kind of like tilts me to Penn State. So probably Penn State or nothing for me here, Cal.
All right, lots more questions we're going to get to on the Instagram chat as well as the YouTube Shorts chat. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Looks like quite a bit of you guys are over there on YouTube. We got to pump those Instagram numbers up, though. That is my goal with the show. Might have to start doing a Thursday and even a Friday or Saturday show. Adam Trigger, the chat on Instagram wants to know, have you made any futures bets or are you shopping around to make some here for the upcoming tournament?
So I have a couple from earlier this year that I don't love. One is actually starting to come back around. So prior to the season, I played St. Mary's at 70-1 to win it all. And they, of course, were horrible in November and December. But it looks like they're going to win the West Coast Conference now, Cal. Especially after winning last night. They held on 70-66 to beat San Francisco. They've got that head-to-head against Gonzaga. So I'm starting to feel okay about that one, at least at where the number is. I did jump in with Michigan State 50-1. I don't even know if they're going to make the tournament at this point. So especially after losing to Iowa last night. So I don't really love that one. This is right around the time of year where I'm probably going to bet Tennessee. So I can just about guarantee I'm going to add some on Tennessee. I still think that they're a team that can make it to the end. I mean, I'm not going to argue. Like last year, I gave out UConn 30-1 in late January. It ends up winning. I have not bet them yet this year.
Oh, come on. You don't want to lay it like the chat did with me and Kelly and Murray, and then they turn around and lose to Creighton.
So I still might. This is the thing, Kel. This is what I want to make this point. I think this is the most important point to make. There's really no bad bet on a team. You can only take a bad number because this tournament is so random and is so contingent on matchups and who loses to who. And there's so many factors that go into winning 6 games over the course of 3 weeks that I really think you can take any team. It's just, are you getting them at the right number or not? That's all it comes down to. Who you know what I'm saying? You just have to get a good number with the team, and then they've got to make the tournament, right? As long as you get in with a good number, you never know. Florida Atlantic was in the Final Four last year. San Diego State was in the Final Four. And if you get to the Final Four, you can maneuver.
Both of those teams helped me greatly when my Calcutta.
Exactly.
So I would say that, but that's why I kind of like the Calcutta format just a little bit more. If you guys can get involved in those, they're super fun where you get a bid on teams, right? And there's some big heavy hitters, and they're going to pay a fortune for UConn and a fortune for Kansas and Kentucky and all of the other one seeds. But you can find Trig some of these like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seeds that there's some real value on. And that's what I really wanted to do with Kelly and Murray here was take like a Creighton at 40-1. And well, saw how that worked out well for me.
Yeah, I don't mind Creighton. I don't think Creighton wins it this year. Like they're very reliant on shot making. Like you can't give up 99 to Butler, 91 to Providence. Like that's going to come back to bite you at some point. I guess if I would throw one out right now that I think is decent value at the number it is right now, it's probably Tennessee. I really think Tennessee finds their way to like the Elite Eight this year, and you get that far and it's like a chip in a chair, right? Like the poker saying, like if you can get there, you can probably like figure out a way to make a little money off of it.
Yeah, why not? I like that. Let's take a couple more questions from the YouTube chat. Abby Jackson, loyal listener. Trig, what is your take on St. John's laying 10 versus Georgetown? Oh my God, St. John's. Okay, I lay it with this team the other night, Trig. They're up huge at halftime. End up losing the game outright. Our good friend Mark Zeno texts me. That's why I only lay it with St. John's in the first half. Is that the only way you'd play it here against a lowly Georgetown squad?
So it's going to be interesting to see how this team responds. Obviously, like the storyline with St. John's right now is Rick Pitino, the comments he made, kind of like throwing his team under the bus a little bit in the media. But like, you never really know how that resonates behind closed doors. Like it's Pitino, right? Like, so he kind of has a little bit more leeway to say what he wants than I would say some others. I got to be honest. I'll be watching this game, Kelly. Like, I don't know if I want to lay 10 with them, but I do want to see how they play tonight and how they respond, because when I'd really like to take them is this weekend against Creighton, coming off of that huge win. So I'll probably be more of a spectator here. I mean, Georgetown, they just like, it's really tough to bet on this team, but they're probably not 10 points worse at home to St. John. So probably Georgetown or pass based on the number, but I want to see if St. John shows any redeeming qualities, I'll probably look to see if I can get a good number with them against Creighton over the weekend.
All right, let's talk the Kentucky Wildcats versus LSU. Pardon me while I pull up the Wagertalk odds screen per usual, because I've got about 14 browsers open at any point in time when I'm doing this, you guys. And it's the end of the day, so my caffeine is now worn off. And, well, then I got to listen to Trig talk about St. Bonaventure, guys. Like, come on. I want to hit the big games, and Trig wants to talk about teams where I can't name a single player. Kentucky is a 6.5 point favorite now over LSU. 163 is the total here, Trig. Kentucky kind of been on what I would call a roller coaster for them, right? Coach Calipari's team is not this powerhouse that we once saw. If you remember, they lost to Kansas on a neutral, no big deal, and then lost at home to UNC Wilmington. Threw together some nice wins, lose a couple of games in overtime to A&M. And Florida lose a wonky game to South Carolina last month. And then, of course, just get smoked by Tennessee a couple weeks ago and then lose to Gonzaga at home as well. So here is a spot where I would think Kentucky and that fast-paced offense can really capitalize against an LSU team whose defense is okay. That's not their biggest problem. The problem is this team turns the ball over so bad. Like this is the team that would frustrate you worse than Kansas State. And I think that's where Kentucky can really capitalize. I don't really love laying 6.5 here on the road, but that's the only way I can look in this one.
Same. I thought about it. Like, it's not I keep saying this, it's not my style, but it came up a couple times today. Like I talked about St. Bonaventure earlier, laying 6 on the road felt right there. And it feels kind of right in this one, just based on like upside, Kelly. Like I'm almost willing to bet Kentucky based on like the upside that this team has right now, and also knowing that I think LSU, I don't have LSU rated very highly. I know they kind of had a quote unquote upset win last time out over I think South Carolina, but South Carolina kind of had one of those coming to them. So you look at Kentucky, they've really been playing good ball for a couple weeks now, and I'm almost willing to just throw the Gonzaga game out, because you got to remember, like, that game meant a lot more to Gonzaga. Like, I understand it was at Rupp Arena, right? Like, it was a home game for Kentucky, but Kentucky does not care about non-SEC opponents in the middle of February. Like, they were already preparing for Ole Miss. That was a far bigger game. They win that game. They really look good over the weekend against Auburn. So I almost like, I'm looking at it like Kentucky's maybe turned a corner a little bit. I wouldn't step in their way here. It would have to be Kentucky or pass for me. Just too big of a gap in talent.
I would have to agree. I want to hit on two more games. One personally, one from the chat. The chat wants to talk about, where did I lose it? Vanderbilt. I want to talk about UTSA and USF. And the IG wants to talk about Nebraska, Indiana. So you pick which of those three we'll hit on next.
We'll talk about Georgia Vandy quick. This is another team that you and I saw in Georgia saw in the Bahamas. And I remember saying matter of factly to you when we were in the Bahamas that Georgia was the worst team in the SEC. Like, I made that statement and kind of had to eat it for a little while because they came out and were really impressive. Like, if you go back to like December, even like January, as we got into SEC play, a win at South Carolina that aged really well. They beat Arkansas, won on the road at Missouri, but they're starting to look like the team that I kind of thought they would be this year. And I don't think it's like a knock on Georgia as much as it is just like, it was a young team. They were relying on Noah Thomason, who was the best player on an average Niagara team last year, to be like their best player. I think that the SEC just caught up with them a little bit. So I think this number's kind of crazy. Like, they're only a pick now at Vandy, who's not a good basketball team. I think some of that has to do with like recency of like the fact that Georgia's lost 6 straight games. I didn't go back and check to see if there was an injury here because this did move. So this opened 2.5 some places. It's now pick. But Vandy, I suppose that result against Texas A&M is definitely impressive. Like, that was a good win for them. But I would need a little bit more value to get involved with Vandy here. That line move suggests Vandy, but I was a little bit scared off just by the fact that I don't think they're a great team. So that's kind of my take on this game.
All right, Trig, you and I are going to wrap it up with Nebraska, Indiana. But really quick, I wanted to touch on the situational spot. South Florida off a big home win over Florida Atlantic. Guess who they play on Sunday? That's right, SMU at home, another top team in the AAC. I know this team has had 11 straight wins, and they probably will beat UTSA tonight, who is abysmal. 6 straight losses. This is ugly, but I did take the 5.5 against one of the worst defensive teams in the country. Trig, Nebraska, 1.5 point favorite. We've got about 90 seconds left. Faces Indiana, total 150. Nebraska has been kind of scrappy this year. I got to give them that much. But as of late, saw them kind of falter. Losses on the road, Maryland, Illinois, and Northwestern. Wins at home, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Penn State. What are we going to get from the Cornhuskers tonight?
Man, I don't know. I want to, Cal, can we end with a different game? I couldn't have less of an opinion on this one. Can I give out like the best bet
How about
for the
this?
show?
You end with, okay, so how about this? That's going to be a stay away. Trig, you end with the game you want to end on.
I like that. I'm going to give you 2. These were 2 that were close, and I'm going to do it as quickly as possible. One, this will be real quick. I like Navy tonight. This was really close to making my card based on the fact that, like, I just think Loyola is the worst team in the Patriot League. Navy's lost like 8 straight games, but this Loyola team, as far as like eye test and what I've seen, I watch a lot of Patriot League basketball. This is a really bad basketball team. They rely on one guy, Deion Perry. He had 30 points against Navy last time out, and I think Navy is at least competent enough where if they figure him out, they're going to win the game, and it's only a pick. The other game I kind of like tonight, which, man, it was a big number, but it probably gets there, and it's starting to come back into range a little bit, is Cincinnati. I think I would have probably laid like 8.5 or 9 here, like for a client play. I thought 10.5 was a little bit much, but this is a brutal spot and matchup for Oklahoma State. Like, you got to remember, Oklahoma State, Caleb Boone, Musa Cisse were their bigs last year. Both of those guys transferred to UNLV and Ole Miss, respectively. Then you had the freshman, Miranda, who never even really saw the court. So this is an Oklahoma State team that hasn't had much of a front court. Bryce Thompson gets hurt. They're just they They turn it over. They don't rebound. They do all the things that are going to get you in trouble against Cincinnati, right? Like they're an elite rim defending. Like they defend the rim as good as anyone. Lakin, Aziz down there in the post. They're number 10 nationally in rebounding. Like they're going to force Oklahoma to have to hit a bunch of tough shots, maybe have to shoot it well from three. It is what they did last game against BYU, but that was in Stillwater. It's going to be a lot tougher to do that on the road. And it's not even something Oklahoma State does well. So, like, I really think the win over BYU is a total outlier for them. They go on the road here. It's hard to not see them getting just wrecked in this game. I thought the books did a good job at making this 10.5. That's a pretty big number for Cincinnati to cover because, of course, Cincinnati is not the most prolific offensive team. But I'm seeing 10, and this is a game that goes at 7 o'clock. If this gets bet down to 10 or 9.5, I think you could jump in with Cincinnati. I won't be surprised if it's like a 20-point Cincy win. Just the way those teams match up seems like it's danger zone for Oklahoma State.
All right, good stuff. Adam Trigger, Trig15 on Instagram. Make sure you guys are giving it a follow. Appreciate everybody in the chat today on Instagram. It was almost a record high number of people, so thank you guys for hanging out there. YouTube, as always, coming in with the comments section. Make sure you guys are giving Adam a follow on X as well at Top Flight Sports. I am Kelly Stewart at Kelly in Vegas on all social platforms. We may be back tomorrow. I'm gonna talk with the Hustle guys and see if I can steal their 6 o'clock time slot.